Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we walk.
Despite American sentimentality over its right to vote and the importance of freedom and patriotism, it seems that nobody is too keen on the elections themselves.
And all of us reflecting on what has been the nastiest of election campaigns.
I thought it was a total nightmare from beginning to end, and it kept getting worse and worse, and then it was over, and I felt no solace because it was conclusion, and it concluded in the worst possible way. So, wasn't a fan.
Because 2016 has been an uncommonly shitty year.
It made me feel a little lost.
I think we can agree that this has been an absolutely exhausting, bruising election for everyone.
That's right.
And it has come to an ending that I did not imagine.
While this year's election may seem especially toxic, anger and divisiveness are not unique to any one election.
And I was struck by one thought today. We have been here before. We have had bitter, angry elections for 200 years.
But if democracy is all about the people choosing the person most qualified for the job, why is everybody so disillusioned with the choices presented?
The fact that those were our two choices.
Didn't feel like they were good choices.
They were not good choices.
When was the last time a presidential candidate from either party stood up to the big three American auto companies? The answer, of course, is never, with the possible exception of Bernie Sanders.
Did you vote for the person that you felt like was the ideal candidate? Like you thought?
I did not. I didn't think there was an ideal candidate.
While Americans may value our Constitution and election system so highly, it may be that this very system is causing the problems that make us so profoundly unsettled.
The point is, this is our thing, okay? And the optimist in me chooses today to be happy that we have fair and free elections at all. I think it's an amazing thing. I really do.
For a country that claims to be the greatest democracy on earth, our election system is remarkably undemocratic. From superdelegates and primaries, to draconian voting laws, to a nonsensical electoral college. Much of the U.S. election takes agency away from citizens instead of empowering them. It is none too surprising, then, that so many people simply become apathetic to U.S. politics, and when most people do not care, then only the most extreme of voices can be heard. It is in these circumstances that a 2016 election can happen. Through a poisonous mixture of bigoted extremism, voter disillusionment, and political frustration, thoroughly unqualified and unsuitable candidates like Donald Trump can be elected to the presidency. While many see this election as a representation of everything wrong with America, it would be more accurate to say that it represents everything wrong with American politics. Though a disgustingly large portion of the American population holds deplorable views, the truth is that Trump simply played the election game better. To understand the election game, you have to go to the beginning, the primaries. Obviously, a country of over 300 million people is going to need some filtering in order to reach a reasonable number of presidential candidates. While there is no set number of candidates, over time the number is settled on 4, 2 major party candidates and 2 third-party candidates. Selecting the candidates for the major parties involves a system called the primaries. Both the Democrats and the Republicans have their own primaries, and the 2016 election demonstrated problems in each system. For the Democratic Party, this was the superdelegate system. Superdelegates are party leaders of the Democratic Party, elected senators, congressmen, and governors, who get to cast their vote for the Democratic Party candidate in addition to the votes won by candidates in each state. Out of 4,767 delegates, 712 of them, 15%, are superdelegates. While 15% may not seem like much, in elections where candidates rarely win by more than a couple percent, that lead is huge for a candidate like Hillary Clinton, who had the votes of the vast majority of superdelegates. Many news organizations granted Hillary all the votes from the superdelegates at the beginning of the primaries, making it look like Hillary already had a several hundred delegate lead before the primaries had even really begun. One of the most common criticisms of Bernie Sanders was that he had no chance of winning, so if you were not informed how superdelegates worked, then you would feel like there is no possible chance that Bernie could win, and you would not bother voting for him. Additionally, many times Bernie would win the popular vote in a state, but due to superdelegates, Hillary would walk away with more delegates. For a person who is disenchanted with the system and wanted to vote for a new voice, or maybe a young person voting in their first election, having your vote have a noticeable lack of any real effect teaches you that your vote doesn't matter. On the Republican side, the issue was not of one dominating candidate, but rather of far too many weak candidates. The Republican Party had a total of 17 major candidates running. Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, Ben Carson, Chris Christie, Carlo Fiorina, Jim Gilmore, Senator Lindsey Graham, Mike Huckabee, Bobby Jindal, John Kasich, George Pataki, Rand Paul, Rick Perry, Marco Rubio, Rick Santorum, Scott Walker, and Donald Trump. It's too many to even keep track of. For many Republicans voting in the primary, it's not that they wanted any one of these candidates, they just didn't want Donald Trump. Unfortunately, there's not a anybody but option. But that is exactly what this system needs, an option to vote for more than one candidate. The biggest problem that the Republican primary demonstrated is how the first-past-the-post nature of our primary elections leads to minority rule. First-past-the-post is the concept you can only vote for one candidate in an election, and whichever candidate gets the most votes wins that election. The 2016 Republican primary shows that when the vote is split among so many candidates, views like Trump's, which are popular among extremists, dominate among a splintered moderate vote. Because so few people vote in the primaries already, this problem is exasperated. A superior way of handling elections is called the alternate vote. In an alternate vote system, you number the candidates by order of preference. If you like John Kasich, Marco Rubio, and Jeb Bush, then you can vote for just those three candidates in that order. If Kasich does not get enough votes to win, then your vote would be transferred to Rubio. This system prevents popular moderate views from being fractured among like-minded candidates. As much as this alternate vote system is needed in the primaries, it is desperately needed in the general election. The problems with the general election are almost too many to count. The biggest problems, however, are encompassed by the Electoral College.
I'm certainly not a fan of the Electoral College at this point.
The Republicans win every time the electoral votes.
At the end, we now know how many votes she got, and he still won.
The Electoral College is undemocratic in almost every way possible. First, it has the same issue of the primaries, it's first past the post, meaning that third-party candidates will never be able to gain traction for fear of the spoiler effect. But worse than this is how a person who passes 50% in a state gets all of the votes from that state. Additionally, states like Wyoming are disproportionately weighted in the Electoral College, so that an individual Wyomingite is worth 4 Californians or New Yorkers. Many defend these intricacies, saying it limits the influence of cities.
I thought it was good because I always think of like the people in middle America, they won't have a voice.
The rationale is that the Electoral College ensures that rural areas have a voice, because without it, cities would overwhelm them with their population. But this is simply not true. The fact is that the comparison between Wyomingites and Californians is completely useless, because neither states really truly matter to the election. When was the last time a candidate seriously campaigned in Wyoming or California? How about Alaska or Hawaii? As these states typically vote one way, and you don't get any extra electors for doing incredibly well in a state, the maximum you get is after 50, campaigning in states that are going to vote for you anyways is incredibly useless. The Electoral College does not protect rural states, instead it puts all focus on swing states.
All along the Trump campaign has been saying that Florida's a must-win for them. And I mean,
they can't win without. I just want to go over to the Trump headquarters, because Mr. Trump hasn't just won Ohio, he's won it big time. And in modern times, the way Ohio goes has been the way the country has gone.
States like Ohio and Florida, which have enough of a population to warrant many electors, but don't typically vote one way or another, are the only states that really get any campaigning in an election. And to top it all off, you aren't even voting for the candidate that you pick on election day. The electors vote for you, and the electors have no obligation to vote for who you chose. In the end, this simply turns our elections into a game, and one that becomes increasingly vitriolic as time goes on.
So how did our politics get so poisonous?
The process is getting too emotional and not fact-based.
I remember vividly in one scene where that's yelling, lock her up, and Trump's almost getting excited by the whole thing. I mean, that's just behavior I haven't seen before. Not that it's probably not happened before, but I hadn't seen it in my lifetime.
We no longer know how to even talk about the issues. We only talk about bad things about the other person.
This seemingly insurmountable divisiveness is exasperated by our media, which is sensationalist and bombarding us with end-of-the-world rhetoric.
The investigations, there's conspiracy theories about the Clintons, they're murderers, the system has been on a 25-year decline, and we get what we deserve.
I think it's because we overdosed, especially this year. We drank too much of the poison. You take a little bit of it so you can hate the other side. And it tastes kind of good. And you like how it feels. And there's a gentle high to the condemnation, right?
But with an incredibly dysfunctional election system, a ridiculously sensationalist media, and a vast gulf between political opinions, the question is, where do we go from here?
We've all seen through the course of this campaign the divisions in this country based on class, education, race, laid bare. Where do we go from here?
It's obvious that our system needs reform. It breeds apathy, and indifference is the only thing keeping it alive. Voters need to become informed, become politically active, and make sure to vote in all elections, including the midterm ones. Switching to an alternate vote has occurred in states like Maine. And additionally, states like Nebraska and Maine proportionally allot electors instead of having the winner-take-all system. Change can happen. Our government was purposefully made with the ability to always change and adapt it. So in order to form a more perfect union, we should be willing to examine the things that are wrong with our election system so we can improve them for all. America is great because its people are great, and if the will of the people is able to overcome indifference and apathy, then our country can do amazing things.